Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews. I just startled my cat by starting the podcast and that was hilarious. This week we're taking a look at the movie Liar Liar, not Lord of the Rings. If for anyone last week switched off the podcast once we confirmed what it was and then didn't keep listening to hear that we're actually doing something different, surprise!
We realised we got the timing wrong. It would be best to align Lord of the Rings with the release of the Amazon TV show. So we're still doing Lord of the Rings, this series of Rewind Reviews. We've just pushed it back to match that.
Yeah. So Liar Liar it is, Chris. Now, we usually get to do a why did you pick this, and we do that on the previous episode. So
Which we shouldn't do. Like, this is the more logical way of doing it.
No, that's true. That is true. So what? Why pick this? Why? So this was picked in weird circumstances, obviously, because you kind of had to do this kind of as a last-minute replacement because we realised we'd cocked up by doing Lord of the Rings when we'd done it, and that actually Lord of the Rings would be more appropriate as a series finale, so it lines up with the new show. So, what was the impetus behind choosing Liar Liar specifically?
I had it recorded a few months ago, and didn't ever went in a kind of Liar Liar, I'll rewatch Liar Liar, and then didn't ever watch it because sometimes you go, I've also got The Mask sitting there on Sky recorded. I've also not watched that because it's like at some point probably going to need to watch that for Rewind Reviews, so I'll just wait. I realised the cock-up with Lord of the Rings, and then realised we would push that back. And as we were discussing it, then realised, obviously, that would mean I need to make another choice. Also, the dates for Lord of the Rings means that technically it will be your choice. So I felt like by moving it, I was slightly taking a choice away from you. So I literally looked at the television screen and went, well, I know Liar Liar is on both our lists, and I have it there, and I need to make a choice fairly quickly, so I'll go Liar Liar. Like, it's as simple as that. It was, well, I might as well do that, because I know it's on your list as well. I know it's on my list, and, it's in front of me. So, in a moment where I have to make a choice fairly quickly and not piss about too much, I went Liar Liar.
I think that's right. I think, like, I respect that you kind of were trying to be considerate of the choices thing. I mean, I wouldn't have minded whatever you chose. It is what it is. We're going to get to all these films eventually. Yeah. But I do. It's nice that you had that in mind. And you're correct. Yeah. Liar Liar was definitely was on my list. I don't know, like, how soon I was willing to go back to the Jim Carrey well, because obviously we did Dumb and Dumber last year, and I was like. Do I want to, because I've got a handful of films that are like at the sort of floating to the top of my list as considerations for this year, and I will admit Liar Liar wasn't on that list, because quite frankly, we just did Dumb and Dumber, and I was really scared to go back to another Jim Carrey film and discover it's deeply inappropriate or something, or really problematic, because Dumb and Dumber was a struggle. For those of you who don't know and haven't listened to our episode last year or last season, please go check that out, because that was a really interesting rewatch. I wasn't looking forward to put myself through that potentially again, but slight spoiler, I think this holds up a lot better than Dumb and Dumber.
I do.
Because I think this is a much better balance of, actual jokes, properly written, scripted jokes that work, and Jim Carrey just doing his insane Jim Carrey thing. And I think the plot lends itself to being able to do both. So it's actually very clear. It's a real lightning in a bottle situation in this film. But we'll come back to that. Do you want to cover childhood recollections of this film? Like, what did this kind of mean to you as a kid? Because, like, for me, this was just a simple one. Like, I just liked this film. I saw it a bunch, but I didn't like. It wasn't like a huge personal connection, but I really, really enjoyed this film and always really liked it. But I was in that weird phase of like everything Jim Carrey's name was attached to. I was like, I'm watching that. So
yes, it's bizarre because I liked Jim Carrey as a kid, but I didn't have The Mask on video. I think I maybe taped The Mask. I didn't have Ace Ventura on video. I had all do you know what I mean? It was
on loop all the time.
It wasn't a specific, go out of my way Jim Carrey thing. But
can I just say that lasted my life because mate, I went and saw fucking Fun with Dick and Jane at the cinema. I saw that movie where numbers were evil at the cinema. Like,
Have you seen Mr. Popper's Penguins?
no, that was where I drew the line. That was my out. That was my out.
I also Fun with Dick and Jane was a weird moment for me because
I actually don't think that's a terrible film, by the way, Tom with Dick and Jane. But anyway,
yeah, and it's not brilliant though, is it? It's a bit long. The reason Fun with Dick and Jane is a weird one for me is because, and if anyone's thinking you should be talking about Lion Liar, I'm fairly confident we're never going to get to Fun with Dick and Jane, so I can tell this story here. Yeah. But we didn't have a cinema in my town when I grew up, so there were two local towns, one that you would have to drive to and one that you would have to you could drive to, but you'd get the train to. So as a kid, we'd go to the one you drove to with family and watch a film, and then with mates in teenage years, we'd get the train and go to the other one and watch a film. So going to the cinema was never not a big deal for me. And still to this day when I go to the cinema, even though I'm now more used to it, hometown's got a cinema and obviously where we went to uni has two cinemas. Even though I am, it's still not a non-event for me going to the cinema. But there was this period, obviously, where I remember freaking people out at uni because someone was like, "Oh, should we go to the cinema?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go to the cinema." And they're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, we're just going to the cinema." And I'm like, "Nah, going to the cinema is a big deal." And because of that rarity, even if I saw a crap film when I was younger, like, say, something that on reflection doesn't hold up, Phantom of the Menace, it was still either I was a young kid.
One day we're going to get to that trilogy. Oh my god.
Yeah, and you know what? On reflection, I'm going to say it, Dan. I think Phantom is definitely not the worst one.
No, it's not. And it's definitely not. It's nowhere near the worst one. The one after that is.
In some respects. But in some respects, I think it even might be better than the third because the third gets a lot of points for that end sequence. Anyway. Even that's stupid. You've got the higher ground. Like, oh, fuck off. Like, literally. Anyway, we'll get there when we get there.
Honestly, one of my greatest sort of excitements is that, at some point we're going to get to them. And also, that might not be that far away because, so we do what we're doing. The trilogy we're doing for the next series has been already set as the Santa Claus trilogy. Series after that, we're open. Let's do it.
Oh, mate. Anyway, so good lord, let's do it. We could have done that for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anyway, so he didn't even think of that, did we? There were so many choices that fit things that we just didn't think about. Anyway, so going to the cinema is still a huge deal for me at uni, and I go to the cinema. I think it was at uni, or maybe it was with an ex. Anyway, Fun with Dick and Jane was the first moment I had at a cinema of like. Oh, not every trip to the cinema is exciting and great. Because even though I'd seen bad movies, like the one where, is it Matt Damon and someone else, a condor stuck on you, that just goes on and on and on for hours.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, it's not good. Even that was still an experience because I was with my mates. But Fun with Dick and Jane was like my first cinema trip. So I remember that film very well. Anyway, Liar Liar. Liar Liar is kind of my Jim Carrey exception in a way, apart from maybe Dumb and Dumber 2, because Dumb and Dumber as well, not the sequel to Dumb and Dumber, because I did have this movie on VHS. I did watch this all the time like you, kind of very similar to you, but without the other Jim Carrey stuff as well. This was the Jim Carrey film that I did have alongside Dumb and Dumber and constantly watched. And yeah, like you, just a lot of no deep personal connections, but just a lot of memories of putting it in and watching it.
And thoroughly enjoying it. And I think, I think this might. We'll have to see, because we'll go back to I know Ace Ventura is going to have some problematic stuff in it. I know, because I remember certain scenes from it that are going to be difficult to tackle for us. The Mask has some weird, creepy stuff in it. Like, I think this might be, and I'm going to look over my shoulder, just check. This might be his best film. This might be
Bruce Almighty's very good.
Okay. Bruce Almighty might be up there too. Maybe we'll come back to a lot of these. But
Eternal Sunshine splits opinion.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Eternal Sunshine. Everyone can come after me for that. But in terms of let me rephrase it then. Of Jim Carrey's Jim Carrey films, where he's allowed to be Jim Carrey, I think the top contenders are Bruce Almighty, Me, Myself, and Irene, and this. And I think
you'd put Me, Myself, and Irene in there. Wow.
I loved that film so much. But I will say, and this is why I'm looking over my shoulder and getting lots of caveats, we've not really watched these recently. I don't know. Maybe we'll go back to Me, Myself, and Irene and it'll be a fucking mess. I remember really enjoying Me, Myself, and Irene.
I take it you're not counting The Truman Show or Man on the Moon as Jim Carrey films, then?
No, this is my point. Because obviously the greatest Jim Carrey film in terms of a film that he is in as an actor is The Truman Show, because that's one of the greatest films ever made, full stop. But I should clarify, of the Jim Carrey films where it's like a Jim Carrey comedy vehicle, where it's Jim Carrey doing his weird, insane shtick, I think this one gets the best balance, because this one, because of its premise, he gets to be a normal, semi-normal person in the beginning of the movie, and then drift into insanity because of a plot reason. And that's rare, I think. Like, a lot of his movies, he's just insane and that's that. Like Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, like, they're just like, oh, he's this crazy, wacky character in a otherwise normal world. I think it works best when you have an explanation for it, when you have a way to go... Because otherwise, you go, well, he's crazy and wacky in this world. Why isn't everyone else in the other movies? Whereas in this one, he's crazy and wacky for a very specific reason, you know. And of course, this also fits a lot of other archetypes, like the 90s trope of the deadbeat dad that's like never there for his son. You know, how many movies are we going to watch that have that plot line? I'm already losing count. We've got Tim Allen coming up later this year. We did Arnold Schwarzenegger Jingle All the Way last year. These movies don't fucking go away. This trope of like the shitty dad that's like never there for his kid. I'm guessing a lot of creatives and writers in Hollywood in the 90s had a rough time in this fucking 70s and 80s with their dads, because let me tell you, dads in movies, shit, during this era.
It is weird, isn't it? And then basically, like, TV shows just took that and ran with it. Like,
yeah.
Like Lost, and Lost is basically just a series of shitty dads.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, so I think, like, on balance, it's got, as far as my memory goes, this one has the least problematic stuff in it. That might change when we watch others, maybe, of the Jim Carrey sort of comedy vehicle ones. But in terms of, like, also the balance of him, I think this is the best version of that you're going to get, which is, like, a perfectly nice family film. Maybe a little safer than some of his other films. But I think it works really well on the whole. Well, it's got problems. We'll talk about the details. But yeah, if we're just doing overall reviews, I genuinely think this one is a bit of a miracle. Because it manages to get to be all of the things, like, in a way that the others don't have. It has a balance the others don't have that really helps bring it all together. I don't know. How did you feel rewatching it?
I agree. I think there are moments where it's very Jim Carrey, and they almost clash slightly. But as you say, at least those moments are justified by the plot. At least those moments are... We know why he's descending into madness. Maybe if we have him sort of be a bit more like that before the turn happens, that would ease that a bit. But, you know, there's the claw stuff and stuff where you see that coming out of him. And then obviously it goes full pelt when he discovers he can't lie. Oh, we should say, for those that haven't seen it, for those that don't remember, the plot of this film is that we have Jim Carrey playing a very untruthful lawyer who's, you know, a bit crap to his son, but very good at his job. He clearly loves his son and means well, but he just ends up, you know, getting delayed by work, and he's just not really there for him. So much so that his son wishes that he couldn't lie for a day. And then for 24 hours he can't lie, which gets him into all sorts of bother with, you know, family, with work, especially because he's taken on a case where in order to win he kind of has to lie, because he's defending a woman that definitely had 7 affairs. And then it's the journey along the way and what he learns. I don't know about you, mate, but were you amazed when it was like, oh, the whole thing takes place in a day? Like, I did not remember that. If you'd have asked me, I'd have been like, yeah, it's a couple of days, I think, because he's in and out of court, like, which
Yeah.
it feels like I don't know if the court system in America really works like that, but every other thing I've seen, it all kind of happens at once, as opposed to it's happening. You got the morning, so you can do some other shenanigans and then come back for this. But it's that made me respect the script. It's quite a tight script, like, for them
it
to
really is.
achieve what they do, and justify what they do. Similar to you, I had a lot of fun. You know, it wasn't. I don't think it made me laugh as much as it did when I was a kid, but then I knew a lot of the jokes, so there was that sort of remembering, nostalgic laugh. And a lot of the times you kind of, you knew what was coming and stuff. I think one thing as an adult that I'm like, oh, I don't know if they quite sold me on that. The notion, I think they could have done a bit more work if they wanted to get them back together at the end. Like, they could have played up, in the scenes where they're fighting, she maybe could talk about the man that she always hoped he could be, and knows he is deep down, but he doesn't bring it to the surface, and that's why they broke up, and that kind of stuff. I think they could have put a bit more into that relationship if they then wanted to get them together, or not have them get together at the end, because I don't think that's necessarily needed. But then I suppose, this was 1997. Unfortunately, as wrong as it is, blended families and, people cohabiting really friendly and divorced and stuff wasn't seen on cinema and TV as much as it is now. And that is wrong, but that is the reality. I can see why scriptwriters sat in a room in 1997 felt they needed to get them back together. Whereas I think if this movie was made now, they'd be going, this is a film about a man and his son. Like, this isn't a relationship film. So I think that feels a bit shoehorned in.
Yeah, but I think you're right. It's a thing of the time, isn't it? Because, like, these days you wouldn't want to project the message of divorce definitely bad, because I think what we've learned societally in the years since is that actually divorce could be a really healthy, positive thing in the right circumstances. Obviously, it can be sad and it can cause harm too. Going through these sort of things is never it's never going to be everyone's favorite thing that happens to them. But I do think there are situations when it's the right move for certain families, and it's a thing that will ultimately lead them to being happier, and get them out of a lot of like conflict that's constantly occurring. So, but this is the era when divorce bad. Like, well, not the era. This is what was the thought, like, for a very long time, that divorce was like last resort, like if that, and like and it looked frowned upon just societally. And I think now we've normalized it a bit more, which is good. But yeah, it makes sense why, as you said, writers in '97 would feel the need to do that. I actually think the solution is simpler. Because I agree with you. I wrote it in my notes. That they do it all too late, and they do it in the last half of the last act in two scenes. They do the scene on the plane where previously they'd sort of not called Audrey's relationship with the boyfriend into question, but then they're on the plane and he says he loves her and she doesn't say it back, which is our first hint that maybe she doesn't feel that same way about him. And it becomes clear that she more loves how he is with Max than how she feels about him. Like, what she loves about him is that he's the opposite of Jim Carrey, that he's been attentive with their son, but it's not the same relationship. She doesn't feel the same way about him as she does about Fletcher, so... Which,
probably seems a bit far-fetched that she's agreed to essentially marry him and move across the country, but
Right, and they have the scene in the middle of the movie where Fletcher says, are you doing this to, like, get away from me to get back at me? And she's like, no, it's not about you. And it's like, I believed her in that moment, but it seems the script didn't, because they then call that into question at the end. It is one of my biggest flaws with the film as well. I understand. I think it's clever that she might have conflated loving how the boyfriend is with her son with loving him herself. I think that's a really interesting idea. And had she voiced that at the airport to Fletcher, then I would, and they'd maybe layered it in earlier in the movie a bit better, shown that she even doubts herself when she tells Fletcher that she's not moving, that she's moving for the right reasons. Maybe have her pause for a moment or hesitate as she says that. Give us, the audience, some indication that might not be 100% true, and then you can get away with the ending a lot better, especially if she then voices that actually outright at the airport at the end before we cut to the 1 year later scene. Because obviously 1 year later is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the current version of this. You're assuming a lot changed in that year.
Yeah, but he does also, to be fair in that sense, it does also set up before the 1 year later, the end of the film says Jim Carrey's character has changed. He's a completely different man now, or going to be a completely different man.
Yes.
And I think they do that, in a way, they do that quite cleverly, because in a way, as much as the scene at the airport with Max says that, also the court case and the scene with his assistant after the court case really says that as well. Yeah, I think for me, in terms of just to answer your previous point, in terms of the mother's, I can't believe I'm not naming any of the characters. I need to get them up so I can. But in terms of her relationship, I think playing on how she feels about him would be the way to do it over how she feels about the boyfriend's relationship with her son, because whilst I think that is there, I think if you push too hard on that, it lessens the fact that it's very clear in the film that she thinks Jim Carrey is a brilliant dad when he's around. The problem is he just doesn't show up. So I think playing too much on her feelings about how the boyfriend is with the son will lessen the fact that actually she thinks he's a great dad. The problem is not whether he's a good dad or not. The problem is he's only a good dad when he shows up, and he often doesn't show up.
Right. So yeah, you need to balance it so it was clear that it's that Jerry, the boyfriend, is always there. He's there for the son.
Yeah.
When Jim Carrey's Fletcher isn't, Which
I tell you what, that's actually quite easy to do. All the shots you have of Max looking sad because Fletcher, which is Jim Carrey's character, hasn't turned up. You then have, it's the boyfriend that picks up the pieces. But this again is the problem with the ending. If you do that, you're then sympathetic to the boyfriend, so the end doesn't work when he's sacked off. I genuinely think.
Isn't that tricky? Because normally in this movie, and let me tell you, the deadbeat dad movies, the king of them all might be Mrs. Doubtfire. The useless dad that can't get his shit together for whatever reason, whether he's not there or some other problem. Because that one does a really good job doing the stereotype, which is the new boyfriend is a real arsehole, which makes it really easy to not care, right? Pierce Brosnan plays this smug arsehole in that movie that's so perfect for making that plot just very smooth, because you do not care if whatever happens to him, negative-wise. He's basically the villain. In this movie, what they've done, which I think is admirable because it's a different approach, it's not the stereotype, they've not gone for the shitty new boyfriend, they've gone for a really nice guy. She just doesn't love him, right? And while I respect that choice, it does make the script writing harder, because it's so much harder to sell us on her ditching him for Fletcher, who's been absolute chaos this entire movie, because he's been a nice guy. He's been supportive. He's been there for them. It's so much easier when you just go the lazy route and go, wow, he's a dickhead.
And the more I think about it, the more I think I'm fairly sure this is how this would play out if the movie was made now. I think you make him the nicest guy in the world, and you have Jim Carrey's character interact with someone, maybe his secretary even is kind of more his age, or he gets a new secretary in the film, or when the other one quits, or the judge is a potential love interest. You basically insert a love interest for him, and that 1 year later is Audrey happy with her partner, Fletcher happy with his, and it's all a happy blended family birthday. And Fletcher is a better person who now can date whoever the love interest for him is. Say it's the secretary character or something, because he's changed as a person and he can be a good father, and they're happy. And I think that's smoother than what we've got now. Or like you say, you make him an arsehole, but it is then a little less unique. I think either is fine, but that sort of blend of the two attempts we have at the moment doesn't work as smoothly.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Very quickly,
Or again, you don't even Jim Carrey doesn't need a love interest because his story is about his relationship with Max. That is, of course, also an option.
Yes, absolutely. Very quickly, just to correct myself, it looks like there's a few different definitions of deadbeat dad as a phrase, and apologies if I've misused it. Apparently, it can sometimes just specifically refer to someone who isn't paying his child support, but there's also people here who sort of use it as to fathers who aren't very attentive with their kids emotionally or get tired after just being with them for an hour and want to get away from them. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm misusing that phrase, so I'll stop using that phrase because there's clearly...
What made you look that up?
I just used it and went, do I actually know 100% what that means? Like, I think I know what that means. Like, so I just Googled it to be on the safe side and discovered that I wouldn't describe there being debate on it, but there are multiple definitions and I wouldn't want anyone to misunderstand.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I thought I'd clarify. Quickly in response to a point you made really early in this that I didn't get a chance to come back to, the day thing. I did remember it took place over a day, but I only remember that because I always felt like it was insane all of this happens in a day. Like, top to bottom, it was always, even as a child, I was like, this doesn't seem right. Like, too much happens for this to be one day. But I did remember that it was so over a day because I remember that being I wouldn't describe Child Dan's brain as ever having a criticism of this movie, but it was something I found strange about the film.
And it is strange. Like, it's really wild that it takes place in a day, especially the court stuff. Because obviously, you know, I've not been to court in America, but based on every other film I've ever seen, that's not how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, certainly would. Well, we know at the moment there's a big trial going on that's very publicly being sort of viewed and followed at the moment. A big celebrity trial, and it's taking weeks to get through all the different witnesses and sessions and stuff. I don't know about you.
What's weird about that? Because, you know, if anyone's not able to work out the time frames, Dan's talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And what's weird is... I
wasn't sure if it was worth me mentioning, but yes, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's so... Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, fair enough.
It's going to be so clear to some. What's weird about that is, just a quick sidebar, because I've not followed any of it, and I just keep seeing news articles where I'm like... And every time I see a news article, I'm like... Maybe I should have followed this because this seems crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just a side.
What's been funny about it is I've managed to accidentally follow it through 2-minute YouTube videos that keep getting recommended to me because so apparently there's been some complaints about this because YouTube's algorithm goes on what's currently popular and a lot of people are interested genuinely and following very intricately all of this case, right? But on the first day, there was a very hyperbolically titled video that was like, you know, Johnny Depp, you know, slamming Amber Heard's lawyer. I don't know. 3 minutes of Johnny Depp, like, being sick of Amber Heard's lawyer's shit or something like that. And I thought, this sounds kind of funny. Let me just, like, take a quick glance. So I watched that video, and now my feed is just every session, 20, 30-minute videos, which I'm not watching. But I always see the headline of the video, so I know what's happening. So I know right now it's Amber Heard's turn to testify these next few days. And I know that because YouTube keeps trying to make me watch the videos. And I feel bad for anyone who's watched more than one because my YouTube feed is full of it from just having watched one, maybe two early on, and then been like, nah, I'm done with this. I can follow the headlines. I know what's going on. Like, I'll see it on Twitter or whatever's going on. But like, fucking hell, it's crazy. Anyway, YouTube's algorithm is absolutely insane. Because it's just like, oh, this is a thing a lot of people are watching. You must want to watch it too.
That's crazy.
But my point is, look, it's a film. I don't mind it being truncated. But here's the problem with that. They actually actively show him going in, coming out, going in, coming out. They establish when it's morning. They establish... There's a timeline constantly being established and reestablished throughout the movie. And you just start to go, well, when is all this happening? I don't understand. Like, and I've been on a jury. Yeah, these sessions stop and start and stop and start all the time. So I do understand how he's able to get out and come back in. But they don't stop and start for long enough for him to go on a jaunt in his car, go and get into whatever the scrape is.
Well,
so,
he speeds, he gets arrested, He goes round there. They go back to the car place. They check the car out. All of these things are taking time.
Right, and that's what's crazy. So yeah, I mean, court definitely stops and starts all the time. From my brief experience in the UK, for sure. I remember there was one piece of evidence they gave, and then it was disputed as whether we should have seen it as the jury because and then they nearly called them like a complete mistrial on the grounds we'd seen this piece of evidence. And they were like, well, now they can't unsee what they've seen. So they had to stop for like 40 minutes while the various attorneys and the judge all went into a room and figured out if they needed to mistrial it, start again with a new jury, in a few weeks' time, or carry on, and whether this piece of evidence would be acceptable or not. It was very, very, it's a really boring thing. The court process is important, but fuck me, is it dull. It's just a lot of people bickering over really, semantics. It's really, it's quite dull. But, so I get it. I do understand what they've done, and I don't think it's completely unreasonable that these sessions would be stopping and starting all day. I just don't think the time between them would be enough to get away with what they're getting away with. But again, it's a movie. You got to keep it going. This is a very minor criticism we've come back to, I think, really, in the grand scheme of things, because it's a silly comedy movie. But it is just interesting that when you're watching it, you are constantly sort of going like, how is this all one day? For sure. So yeah, and also I think as well, like the way that the way the case plays out as well. Like obviously, but this is again, no film has ever gotten this right. But the courtroom stuff is obviously handled in that way that's like TV acceptable. Where they're just entering new evidence and like out of nowhere and like. That's not how court works. Evidence is all pre-seen ahead of the trial. It's all pre-agreed. It's just the actual court stuff in this is like with any court or lawyer movie, TV show, or any hospital or doctor drama. Is just completely factually backwards, but it serves the story, and that's fine. So I don't really mind. It's just an observation for anyone listening that they get a lot of that very wrong.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, it's a comedy, and you forgive all of that stuff pretty easily.
Yeah, when we sat down to analyze it for an hour plus 2 hours, whatever we're gonna do, you bring that up because like it is technically something the film kind of gets wrong, but like it does in the grand scheme of things, that is a nitpick. It doesn't affect anything.
So what surprised you? What did you not remember? What were you like? Oh, or what? And what was either impressive or not impressive?
Yeah, no, I was really impressed that there was actually a sharp script in there, because we did Dumb and Dumber, and my memory of Dumb and Dumber is Jim Carrey going, doing all of his weird noises and faces, and I'm like, oh, God, we're going to have to sit through all of that again, or Jim Carrey mugging at the camera. And the movie's got plenty of that, don't worry. But that's the stuff I found funny as a kid. As an adult, I'm like, was there going to be anything here for me? But I remember my parents enjoying this movie, but not caring for Dumb and Dumber. So I sat down with this one going, I wonder if there is something more for adults in this. And I'm not talking about actual adult humor. I just mean less juvenile jokes. And what surprised me the most was that things that I laughed at this time were not the things I was laughing at as a child at all, and that there were plenty of them. My favourite moments from the movie, I'll read a couple of them very quickly to you now, was when Audrey replies to him, you have to remember that when we were married, I wasn't having sex nearly as often as you were. That's an amazing line for a couple of reasons. One, it's a great joke. Two, they gave it to the lady. I don't mean to point out a finger at any particular movie, but movies from this era usually give all the funny lines to the dudes, and the women were there waggling their fingers going, oh, you silly boys need to stop being so silly. I like that they gave her the chance to be funny and quick-witted and on, playing tennis with him and not immediately losing. I also really enjoyed when Jerry says, great gift, Dad, and Jim Carrey replies, thanks, son.
Yeah, that was great.
That absolutely cracked me up. That was amazing. And then he adds, I'm so glad my gift could bring them together. My plan to phase myself out is almost complete. That's a great line too. Yeah. I really loved when when Jennifer Tilly's character, I can't remember the name of the character, when she comes in, she says, I brought my kids for sympathy, and he replies, well, it's working. I feel sorry for them already. These are great jokes. On paper... Yeah. Absolutely brilliantly constructed actual functioning jokes. The movie is not reliant on Jim Carrey's noises and mugging and physical comedy, which is all superb because he's Jim Carrey. He's very good at that. But fuck me, there's actually stuff here to laugh at that's not just that. The movie isn't just going, well, Jim Carrey's in it. All we need to do is write a vague story and Jim Carrey will run around saying weird shit and we'll add that in and that'll be the jokes. They actually wrote a script first that was funny on its own right. That's the thing that really surprised me. Objection on what grounds? Because it's devastating to my case. These are good lines. These are great lines. So yeah, I think the thing that surprised me the most.
I really enjoyed, and this is an example where even the Jim Carrey moments are genuinely really funny. I liked. I hold you in contempt. I hold myself in contempt.
Yeah. It's great. This is good stuff. Like the fundamentals are there before they let Jim Carrey go on, and that might be why a movie like this works so well. Something like Ace Ventura, I'm worried about when we rewatch will be a lot of just they left the script like blank in pages. Like Jim Carrey will do something insane here. Tick. That's our joke for the scene.
Well, I don't think know. A lot of it. It's
we'll
funny.
See.
I felt from the outtake, at the end, the outtake when she says prenuptial agreement, and he's like prenuptial agreement, and he does a little dance, and then I went back and watched how that scene actually plays, and he just goes prenuptial agreement. So I think I'm not sure how much is in the script and how much, almost, and ironically, because I think he has an unwritten script credit on this. He looked at it. Judd Apatow, that approach of let the comedians be comedians, do a bunch of takes where they do different readings, and then we'll choose in the edit. I think with a lot of this early Jim Carrey work, it wasn't necessarily in the script. They just did, a bunch of takes where sometimes Jim would be Jim and then chose what to use when editing, would be my theory. Like yourself, that's just a theory.
Yes.
But that's certainly what the outtakes of this imply.
Absolutely. But I don't think there's a chance in hell I brought my kids for sympathy. Yeah, it's working. I feel sorry for them already. Lines like that, the things I've sort of was highlighting specifically there, seem very scripted. In a good way. They feel like tightly written jokes. And I just think the fact that the movie has both is what works. I'm not saying cut all the Jim Carrey stuff, because it's embarrassing and bad and not good. Obviously, he's extremely good at that stuff. But as an adult, that's the stuff I'm finding least funny compared to the actual well-constructed jokes. And I think for me, the biggest surprise coming into this was that stuff was there and worked as well as it did. I really wasn't expecting that. I really thought this was a movie of Jim Carrey insanity, which would have would have been uproariously funny for child me, but only mildly amusing for adult me. And again, what he's doing on screen is extremely impressive. And also, you're right. Looking at the outtakes, which are built into the credits, it's clear how much he was bringing to the role on set. Even though in the trivia there is a point about how his tendency to improvise and go off script did extend production schedules and did cause a lot of frustration amongst the cast and crew. So, and we were, and if anyone's going, well, you got speculation, Dan, you can't necessarily say that's definitely a thing. That's just some trivia you found on the internet. I've seen the documentary about Man on the Moon. I think that's probably believably. I buy that. Basically, I think we have enough evidence to think that that's probably true.
I'm assuming Jim Carrey walked around acting like he couldn't lie for the duration of filming this.
It's funny you should say that. I don't know if that's what he did, but he certainly lied to the press about what this movie was about quite a bit. There's a particularly funny one where he described, they asked him what the movie was going to be about, and he basically I think he just basically repeated the plot of the movie Under Siege 2, claiming that's what this movie was about.
That's amazing.
Why? Because the movie's about a liar, I guess. So, So he was, here we go. When Jim Carrey was interviewed about the film, he stated it was about an ex-Navy SEAL turned crook who's trapped on a ship. This is the plot of the movie Under Siege, starring Steven Seagal.
That's so good.
So yeah, I don't know. I just made me laugh quite a lot.
That's amazing.
So we do need to tackle the other nitpick. If we've done the nitpick of like the time scale, there is one other nitpick, Chris. So I hope you've got your coat on. It's a bit chilly out. You ready to travel up to nitpick corner?
Take that walk. Why not?
Yep. Obviously, it goes without saying, the actual premise is completely broken by default for the same reasons that the invention of lying as a movie is broken by default. Just because you're prevented from telling a lie does not automatically mean you have to blurt out the truth. There are many occasions where he could just choose to say nothing and would have gotten away with it. So I think the movie kind of explains it. They kind of make his character be a bit of a motor mouth in the early scenes. Like, he's always just got a snappy response to something. So he's always doing a response to a thing that's being said to him. He struggles to just be quiet. I can relate to that. I talk a lot. So I know they kind of get away with it here in a way they don't get away with in the movie The Invention of Lying. If anyone hasn't seen The Invention of Lying, it's a movie where there's a world where everyone just says the truth all the time. No one ever lies. And then Ricky Gervais's character is the first person to discover he can lie. But in that movie, everyone walks around going, "You look ugly today," and "Oh, that's terrible. Why would you do that?" And this is going badly, and like people just being completely openly honest with each other. But it's like, again, you don't. The concept of lying is unfamiliar to you, but you could just choose to say nothing. You don't have to tell someone they look ugly. It's not lying to say nothing. So the lying by omission does exist, obviously, as well. But that's if you're already talking about this. You don't have to bring a thing up if no one else has. So yeah, there's a lot of that in this movie. I don't know. It's fine, I guess. They kind of like it's just one of those inherent flaws in a concept like this that you can't get around. It just exists. And if you fix it, then there's no movie, because then the movie is just him really not talking a lot for a whole day.
Yeah,
and that's not a movie.
That's it's you could look at What Women Want, a whole bunch of movies, and say the same. Absolutely. What's interesting to me about the rules, do you think he is incapable of saying a lie, or do you think he is incapable of saying a lie factually? So, for example, when he says that man is a good father, that is categorically true in the world. Or do you think he is incapable of saying anything he believes to be a lie? So when he's saying that man is a good father, or indeed when he's saying that he's a bad father, that is what he believes to be the truth.
Yeah, I think it's the second one. Because
I'd like to think it's the second one. I think it's a better film if it's the second one.
Because there's a scene that tries to contradict that, where he states the something he'd read about what happens if you hold in your pee for too long, that it can affect your bladder or whatever. And the judge goes, "Is that true?" And he goes, "It has to be. Like, I've said it, so it has to be true because I can't lie." But I think the rules are he can't say something he knows to be true, because we come across this problem a little bit later in the movie, right? When he's like, "I can't ask a question if I know the answer is going to be a lie," which is insane, because a question is inherently a question, and I don't think a question can be a lie, right? Because a question isn't giving information; a question is seeking information, right? So you can't mislead with a question. You can lead someone to a lie. You could lead the answerer of the question to a lie, but you're not lying by asking a question. I can ask you now, Chris, are you completely naked? Now, you may reply, "No, of course, Dan, I'm wearing clothes." And we all know you're lying, because obviously you record the podcast in the nude, famously. But I'm not the liar in that situation by simply asking, "Are you dressed?"
The other problem with it is, any time you're thinking about me, you're picturing me naked.
True. But it's
But
hard not
regardless.
to. Again, you record the podcast in the nude, and we've done several in person. So, it's hard not to get that image out of your brain.
I don't have a mic stand, so ask yourself how I'm keeping the mic up.
I don't need to ask myself, Chris. As I've said repeatedly now, we've done them in person. I've seen it.
Yeah, you've seen it. You've seen it strapped to it.
So, asking a question isn't a lie, like in that context, So, and he's not including the lie in the question. It's just strange the way they framed that. I mean, again, you can't fix it because then there's no movie. Because if he's capable of asking questions without lying, then again we lose the third act. So
yeah, it's
and there's no way around
again,
that.
Like you say, it's nitpicking because it makes it work. But I think it's a really sweet notion of, because there are elements of him that aren't a bad father, but in that moment, if he's being honest with himself, he's a bad father, and I think that's very powerful. So yeah, that's the interpretation I want to take, as much as there are various contradictions, and I don't think the writers even thought about it, or if they did, they got hushed by someone who wasn't bothered. Yeah.
Every movie needs a Harrison Ford in the room to be like, it's not that kind of movie, kid.
And this
Mark
isn't
Hamill
that kind
thing.
of movie. Yeah, and this definitely isn't that kind of movie. So
yeah, 100%. And like for my money, like I think when it's like something so minor, like all right, I could pick apart the rules of this movie all day. We could sit here and make it just point out that like almost none of this script makes sense scene to scene, and that's even in a world where you're accepting the wish makes his dad not be able to lie for a day. The actual rules of that are just like all over the place. But again, it doesn't affect anything, and there's no way around it. It's not like, well, I will say I looked at the phrasing of the question because I was thinking maybe you can fix this by phrasing the question differently. But so the words word for word, what the kid says: I wish that for only one day, Dad couldn't tell a lie. Now the movie's called Liar Liar. That's the line, right? One way to fix some, not all, but some of the contradictions is that I wish that for only one day, Dad would tell the truth.
Mm.
Because that then does fix some of the blurting out stuff. Because you go, he has to tell the truth now. He's compelled to be honest. But then you lose some of the scenes where he's
sense.
like trying to lie and, losing his mind. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. Because,
that covers both, doesn't it? Actually,
yeah. The pen is red would still, work.
yeah.
That scene would still work with that. Yeah. So what? Reverse of the question: what were you like? Oh, that's bad, or is it the stuff we've named? Like the main one was the relationship with the mum and stuff.
No. The only thing that the relationship with the mum stuff didn't work for me, but I will say as well. The other thing that I wasn't thrilled with, it was the only part of the movie I felt was like weirdly not. I don't want to sound like I'm on like a left-wing soapbox about like problematic content in these movies. Like obviously, you've got to draw a line somewhere with the past and just go, look, we've learned. Okay, that's fine. The one thing I did think was interesting, and I don't think this is necessarily. This is the other problem, is I don't think this is even what the writers were trying to imply. But by accident, Chris. The scene when he goes into the lift and harasses that woman because he can't not compliment or talk about or react to her rather large breasts.
Well, that one, in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of like, I think what you talked about before, where sometimes it's like, well, you don't have to say anything. That's most egregious when he's going down the hallway just insulting his colleagues.
Yes.
I think with that one, she makes a comment about how lovely everyone is and what slips out. So I don't think that's not...
No,
he doesn't
no.
walk in and go, you've got big boobs. He is responding to something in that moment.
So this is a good example of when that element of it is working as it should be. She asks... He makes the natural response comment to what she said and includes the truth. That's different, right? Because his temptation there would have been to lie and say, well, you have a lovely smile, or I'm sure you've been very welcoming to them, and they're being welcoming to you back, or like, something like distracting from the thing he's obviously really thinking. It makes sense that he would lie, that he would tell the truth in that moment. So I agree with you on that. But in terms of the angle of slightly problematic content, I'm not sure I like the implication that men are inherently lying to themselves and to everyone around them by choosing not to constantly harass women they're attracted to. The idea that if you took away our power to lie, we just go nuts. And I think that has a weird accidental subtext about men that I, again, don't think was intended. It's just a comedy film with a scene, so I don't want to I don't want to make it seem like I'm like going nuts over something that's nothing. But that didn't 100% sit right with me. I'm not sure I like that implication. Like if you took away my ability to lie, I'd basically just harass every woman that passed me. Weird. But also, if we're just doing small nitpicks while we're here, there are many other attractive people in this movie that he doesn't immediately leap on or harass. Why her? I guess because it came out. I don't know. Felt weird.
Yeah, I think the sex thing as well is a bit like, it's not problematic in that way, but the shame of it with like the sex scene where he chooses to sleep with his colleague instead of seeing his son is, at the beginning he lets his son down because he was promised they'd go boxing, but he has to work. But you do understand why he has to work. Later on, you know that he's been arrested, and that's why he hasn't met him at the airport. And with the other scene, I can't remember what the reason is he doesn't pick him up, but he has to be in court, and he has, like, every other moment of him treating Max poorly is sort of justified, or you at least understand, even if you wouldn't, even if you would piss off the boss and not take the case or whatever, you do understand the reasoning. I know, in his head, sleeping with her is going to get him ahead or whatever, but choosing to do that instead of going to his son's birthday is also a moment where I'm like, it's a bad dad movie, so I don't mind him being a bad dad. He has to be a bad dad, so at the end he can redeem himself. But this movie, actually, all the times he's a bad dad, they justify them, which is actually, again, quite unique and shows evidence of a much tighter script than some of these movies have.
Yes.
Except that scene where the justification is flimsy.
Yeah, I think that is the flimsiest one. It's the most overt him being bad as a dad, like on purpose, by choice, because like, and it's there. Like, the explanation is there. It's the job thing. It's because later on he very much clarifies that he slept with that woman because he thought it might help his career. She's a weird character because she's kind of weirdly villainous, but then doesn't really do anything in the second half of the movie. She tries to use it. She tries to lose him his job when she realizes that he can't lie, but then she just sort of vanishes from the third act of the movie altogether and never get any closure on that situation.
Well, she sat there next to the big boss in the court case.
Yeah, she pulls a face when he wins.
Well,
yeah, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. It's just doesn't really. Yeah, just she considering how involved she is in the earlier parts of the movie, it's kind of weird that she vanishes there, but whatever.
And also weird how weird she overhears that he can't lie and just takes that as read and is just like, oh well, clearly that's true. His son made a wish. Yeah, I buy that logic. Right.
Yep. On board. So from your perspective then, because you were asking me sort of like about things that sort of surprised me, both good and bad. Was there anything that you had that we haven't covered, like that sort of like was better than you remember, or anything that really didn't work that you wanted to sort of cover?
No, I think we've covered it well. I think and I'm always very cautious of this criticism. But in a world where a lot of 90s, early noughties films, the child actors are often criticised, I think the actor who's playing Max is very good. Yes. I think he's very believable. It's just genuinely a very good acting. He does a really good job. So his name is Justin Cooper. let's click on his thing. Let's see if he's still acting as an American producer and former child actor. So he's, still in the industry, still producing, or at least he produced something, or he acted in something in 2003. So, that's good.
That is good.
I think he does a great job. I think he's really strong. And all the acting in general, actually, is very good throughout the film. But I think, the only sort of other note I had was to give him a shout out because, child stars often get criticised in these films. But I think he does a really, really good job. And he has that funny bit at the end where it's like, Max, did you wish for us to get back together? Nope, I wish for roller skates. Rollerblades.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Funny.
What did you think about the pacing? Because I was undecided, because the pacing is very frenetic. It's jumping scene to scene. It's just, the movie is like rolling down a hill and gathering speed at all times, and it only really slows down for a minute at the end, which is a scene I do want to talk about specifically afterwards. But how did you feel about the pacing? Because I'm kind of undecided. Because parts of me went, this is too much, and parts of me went, this is about right for a movie like this.
Yeah, I think it's fine because, one, it's the madness of the situation and what's happening to Fletcher's character. Right. It echoes Jim Carrey's character, and fundamentally, Dan, we got ourselves a sweet 86-minute film. I guarantee you rewind reviews. You're sitting down, you're watching Liar Liar, you click on Liar Liar. I don't know if it's on Amazon. Say it is, because I had it recorded. But you get Liar Liar up. You click play, and you see that Liar Liar is 130 minutes. You're going, oh fucking hell! This film needs to be 86 minutes. I'm fine with that.
I think that's fair. I think that is fair. Yeah, I'm interested because I just looked up the length of next week's film.
Okay.
I was just checking something. We'll talk about it in a minute. 100%. I think that the pacing picks up because everything's so manic for him. So I think it kind of works. It kind of echoes what it's doing. Just some random compliments for them, because we have spent a lot of this podcast doing the nitpicks because they're the funnest part of a podcast like this. But I just want to give them credit writing wise for the sequence in which we realize how truly awful Jennifer Tilly's character is, and for out of spite choosing to take the children away from the dad who she already acknowledges is a good dad. That scene, the way that plays out, what it does for both your perception of what's been happening in the courtroom, but also for what's going on with for Fletcher, in terms of his internal struggle. And then him making the move of no, this is wrong, and actually, being outspoken. We don't get a conclusion to that story, which is a bit frustrating, other than that, Jim Carrey objects to what's been happening verbally, but then, we don't know what ends up happening. I hope those poor kids don't get taken away from their dad. But anyway, that scene is brilliant. It slows the movie down for a minute, lets our lead character, demonstrate that he's really learnt something, and it's powerful. It's really powerful.
It's also a big reflection on how strong that script is, because the fact that because of a bad version of this film, he doesn't get to win the court case. A bad version of the film is he comes to that realization earlier. And he throws it, he takes himself out of the race, and he goes, you know what, no, fuck it, you shouldn't win. And the guy wins, and he's happy that the guy's won. That's a bad version of this film. The fact that this film gets that moment of triumph where he finds a way to win, finds a way to win whilst telling the truth, but then has the moment where he realizes he shouldn't have won and makes you believe that moment. And so you sort of feel pleased for him when he wins because he found a way to do it without lying, and because, you feel they've made you feel for the character. And then they justify the turn at the end. All of that is brilliant writing. And there are 50 different versions of that go a bad way with bad writing.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's so well executed, and I credit as well to the performer that plays the sort of dad on the other side of that court case, because and those two kid actors as well. Actually, to be fair, they all three of them really sell you in a very short space of time on their relationship, and won't have been. I don't think that will have been an easy, because they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting there in making that moment work. Because it's on the page, that moment is just the actual interaction between the three of them is pretty short, because then Jennifer Tilly's character comes in and like pulls them away. They have to communicate a lot in a very short space of time, and I think all three performers do a really good job.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. Are we?
I'm just checking if I've got any other notes that I want to cover before we get into the triv. 1 second, Chris. Oh, yeah. Should we talk very briefly about the pen is blue scene? I think the pen is blue scene is probably one of the more famous scenes from the movie. It's not the best joke in the movie, but it is a lot of great physical Jim Carrey comedy.
Yeah, the best part of that scene is the interactions with the assistant.
Yes.
Like, as she comes in, realizes and asks about her pay rise and stuff.
Yeah, that scene's great. Although, weird. So she tells this story about what a terrible person he must be because he's defending these people that don't deserve to be defended or whatever. And she tells this really heartbreaking story about a friend of hers who, there was a guy robbing her house. He got injured robbing her house and then sued the woman. And she says, and people like you helped him succeed. And I'm going, how long have you worked for him?
Yeah, completely.
What? If that was your objection sooner, surely, than now.
Yeah. I don't think they needed that bit. They could have done it all with the raise. Do you know what I mean? Or they could have done it like a better one, you do the raise thing, and then instead of the weird, what would you have done with my friend thing, you have her say, I had a family event that I missed because you insisted that I did this thing, and you said if I didn't do it on that day, the firm would have been in trouble. Was that true? And do you know what I mean? That's a way more effective second, straw that broke the camel's back than the other one.
I see what the writers are doing. They were trying to reinforce this idea that he gets bad people off, so that at the end of the movie, when he says to her, we should start our own law firm. Like, we should start our own, business and practice law, ourselves instead. Look, the implication being, we'll do it for the right reasons with the right people. We'll defend those who need defending. Put my skills to that use instead of defending all these crooks. But the movie's done enough of that, right? Like, I understand the impulse completely to have her give another example of the sort of thing he does. It really reinforces it, specifically in relation to his relationship with her, but it just feels out of place. Because if she's that morally objectionable to the stuff he does, then she should have left a long time ago, so it doesn't really work.
Yeah, completely.
Let's have a quick look. The roast scene. An early example of male privilege, Chris. I don't know. For those who don't remember, when the lady that doesn't like him anymore because he was honest with her after they had sex and said that he's had better, when she finds out that he can't lie, she puts him into a boardroom and asks him what he thinks of the various people in it. And then he just one by one shits on all of them, and turns out they find it fucking hilarious, and they're all banging the desk and roaring with laughter, repeating what he's saying, and he sort of bows and leaves the room, and she just looks miserable, and all I could think was, yeah, male privilege.
Certainly the way
it's not the intention of the scene, I don't think, but if she'd done that, they wouldn't have laughed, I don't think.
No, yeah, it's a shame, because I think there's a more... and again, I think you'd maybe get this in a modern script. There's a more nuanced interpretation that they would have only had to change a few things to go for, which is the reason the main guy laughs, the big boss, is because no one ever talks to him like that. So he just finds it funny, the notion that someone has, and maybe he's got a good sense of humor, whatever. And then the reasons everyone else is laughing, even though they don't find it funny or are a bit offended, maybe almost, is because the big boss guy laughed, so we have to laugh as well. but they don't play that interpretation of the scene. And you know what? Maybe there's no time or place in this movie for that interpretation of the scene. But I think it's a shame because I think that's a more nuanced version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Are we ready to triv it up?
Two more very quick things. Sorry, because I've forgotten about like how much stuff is in this movie that we haven't discussed. There are two more sequences that I just wanted to give a thumbs up to. That "I'm kicking my ass, do you mind?" scene is very good. Doesn't come to anything because then he goes into the courtroom and they have that great moment where the judge says, "Unless you feel ready to continue," and he can't lie, and he has to say yes. That's fun. All the ways of him trying to get out of being in court that day, they're all pretty good. They're silly as hell, but like they work. Like him needing to pee and being really excited about the fact he needs to pee because he can say that truthfully, and then him beating himself up so he doesn't have to do court, and then the judge accidentally fucking him right over. That's good fun. We haven't talked about the final sequence of the movie either, the plane chase. Which is a super fun sequence for those who don't remember. He's basically trying to... Oh, actually, no, I've got a small nitpick here, actually. Sorry, we spent so much of this in nitpick corner. But the other reason this feels like how is this all happening across one day is Audrey's moving that night now. Isn't it her son's birthday still? Oh, no, that was the night before. Like, right, yeah. But they were going to play baseball in the evening. But now they're moving to another state evening?
What's really annoying about that is it becomes they're moving. Originally, it's he's going to San Francisco to look for houses and they're going with him to like choose a house with him. But then it sort of shifts and becomes this big, because it's more dramatic and justifies the madness more, but it then becomes they're moving. But I think originally there is he's looking at houses and we're going to go with him to look
so
at
yeah,
houses.
so I guess that plane
like,
trip
no,
isn't
don't.
her literally moving, it's just her going on the trip to look at houses. Right. That makes more sense.
Yeah, it's going, but it symbolises the fact that this is
that
going to
sense.
happen.
But the sequence is, of course, Fletcher like decides to chase them through the airport. It has this great scene where he's talking to the luggage guy, and the luggage guy's like, "You're never going to catch that," but in the background, he's just like wrapped around a suitcase as it goes on the conveyor belt. Lots of fun little stuff. Like him on the stair lift, going past the different windows is fun. It crashing and him being all in the luggage is totally fun, except for if you ever had your bag lost at an airport, you watch that and I think. Well, all I'm saying is need a trigger warning here for people who've lost bags at airports. That's all I'm saying.
Fair.
I've arrived in England. Where's my bag? We appear to have sent it to China. Oh, why?
Has that actually happened to you then?
What's that, sir?
Has that actually happened to you?
Years ago. And then I loved calling and getting updates on like where it was. Like they were like, yeah, it's ended up in Brazil. Fun. I'm glad it's having a nice holiday. Can I get it back soon?
Although that's the better way. Like returning home and it being lost is better than getting there and it being lost.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're right, because then you're screwed. Then you're in another country and you've not got your luggage. Yeah, that's true. I think it's happened to Nadia as well. I think Nadia had a story about that. Anyway, so I just wanted to say as well, the last thing I wanted to give credit to after the plane sequence that we haven't talked about, and I think it's really important because it really sells me on the emotional core of this film, which is Fletcher's relationship with Max, which is the end when he tells Max that he wants to be there for him and he wants to change. And Max turns to his mum and says he must mean it because it's he can't lie. And Fletcher turns and says, actually, the time has run out on that. The day has ended. I'm afraid like I can lie now. And Max is like, does that mean you're lying now? And he's like, well, no, it doesn't mean that. I'm going to always be honest with you going forward. What a great piece of writing. Simple.
Yeah, brilliant.
Tells you everything you need to know about how he's changed. That he's going to be completely honest with Max all the time. He's willing to risk Max thinking he's still lying to him in service of being honest. Just very well written, very sweet. Yeah,
agreed. Yeah, no, that's very good writing.
Yeah. So, sorry for the delay.
Let's triv it up!
Hitting up on some of the notes. Let's triv it up. I'm going to give you some trivia. Someone noted the other day that I sound less and less enthused every week I do that. It's not going anywhere. We're committed. It's what it is.
He is less infused. Let's be honest. If it weren't for me, this bit would have ended a long time ago. But I refuse.
That's fair.
It's been 10 years. I let go of what was Keenan's plan. I've let go of so much, people. I'm not letting go of this. Back off.
Yeah, we're triviaed up and we're giving you some trivia. That's what it's going to be. So,
Let's triv it up!
I'm going to give you some trivia. There you go. Some enthusiasm. I've put some enthusiasm into it this week, Chris.
Good.
Let's see. The script. So the script wasn't always about a lawyer. Fletcher, in some early drafts, was a politician or real estate agent. The filmmakers were influenced by the movie Big, which was another popular movie about a boy's wish coming true. That's for the early drafts of the script. So it seems like
lawyer
the
is absolutely the right choice, though.
Yes,
lawyer is. It sounds like liar. They could do that bit at the beginning. It's I don't think it worked. This movie works as well if he's not a lawyer.
Correct. Yeah, 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. So in the early drafts of the script, when it was still being worked on, this is before the eventual director Tom Shadyac comes in. They were looking at doing it with Steve Martin. They also considered Robin Williams, who ironically then would work with the ultimate director of the film, Tom Shadyac, a year later in the movie Patch Adams. But when it was this sort of Steve Martin version of the movie, that's when they were looking at all the different options for what he could be doing. In fact, it was I've lost my place in the trivia. Oh yeah, so when Steve Martin was came to the film, it's quite different in many ways. Martin's version of Fletcher Reed would have been more, or would already be at the top of his game in his career. Still married, but a bad one, like a marriage that wasn't working. They were going to have multiple kids. When Jim Carrey was cast and they brought in Tom Shadyac, many of the elements were changed to suit his age, but also the story. So he's up and coming in his career, divorced, just one child to keep it focused. I think that works, and I think those are all smart decisions. Robin Williams was offered it, but declined. At one very early stage, presumably pre-Steve Martin, they were even talking to Hugh Grant, but that didn't work out for whatever reason. So the original screenplay was Paul Goy and Stephen Matzer, and it was rewritten from scratch by directors Tom Shadyac and Mike Binder, with further rewrites being performed by Steve Odekirk, but also uncredited at some stage in all of those rewrites, Judd Apatow was involved. I tried to look into this and get more specifics of when Judd Apatow was involved. He's unfortunately uncredited, so no one can actually clarify whether it was the Steve Martin version Apatow wrote on or the version that they had done with Jim Carrey. Where in the sequence of events, I really don't know. But one thing that's clarified here with all those changes across all those writers, the basic concept of the film of being a man unable to lie for 24 hours, having to rebuild his relationship with his son or kids, was retained from the very earliest draft to the final draft, even though almost everything else was scrapped. So there you go.
I think if we're doing that hop into a parallel world thing, I think seeing the Steve Martin version would be fun.
Yeah. Even the Robin Williams version. I think Robin Williams would have been really good in this role too. It would have been a different movie, but I suspect there's a real chance it could have been a good one. Jim Carrey actually declined the role of Dr. Evil in Austin Powers to do this movie, which I think worked out for the best because that meant Myers got to be Dr. Evil, which is fun. And Jim Carrey got to do this, which, as I've said, is probably one of the better sort of Jim Carrey comedy vehicle movies, if not the best one.
You know why I think as well that works out? Because I think I suspect maybe, given that Austin Powers was, very successful, although Jim Carrey doesn't like traditionally doing sitcoms, so, maybe that wouldn't have bothered him. But even if there were years, 10 years ago, Jim Carrey maybe regretted that. You know why I think it's also worked out now? Because I think if Jim Carrey was Dr. Evil, he wouldn't have been Dr. Robotnik. And I think he's a better Robotnik than he would have been Dr. Evil.
Agreed. I think he's a perfect Robotnik. I'm very nervous that he said he might not do that again, and they're doing a third Sonic movie. I need Robotnik in my movie. The Sonic movies have been really fun, and I'm very pleased they've been successful for everyone involved. So Tom Shadyac and this is a small section. Sorry, this is a small section of trivia. I'm calling. Do you guys know what movie you're making? There are three pieces of trivia that made me raise an eyebrow. Tom Shadyac, who had previously directed Ace Ventura and The Nutty Professor. Might have been Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, actually, which is the second one. I'd have to look that up. But one of the Ace Ventura movies, and the Night Professor. When he got together with Jim Carrey to sort of start planning this, they both saw the film as a transition in their careers towards more grounded comedies.
Wow. I mean, premise alone. Do you know what I mean? Contradicts that.
Let me read you the next one. Jim Carrey agreed to do the film after reading the script, feeling happy to play a character who was a normal person.
Jesus. Like, okay.
Tom Shadyac said that he and Carrey wanted to do a film without flatulence, but couldn't grow up that fast. That concludes the segment. What movie do you think you're making?
Wow. I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? There is in a world of dramatic retellings, in a world of Bel Air, there is a drama you could do of this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But it's not that they didn't think they were making a drama, I guess. They were saying sort of like, oh, it's a more grounded one, but it's not that grounded. It's pretty wacky. But yeah, I guess if we're comparing it to, Ace Ventura or Dumb and Dumber, then yeah, I guess this is more grounded. But we're talking degrees, not, not big leaps.
Yeah, so. No, I mean, separate to all of that stuff, like, I would be interested to see a drama version.
Yes, 100%. Let's see. Jim Carrey was apparently paid, $20 million to do this movie.
Wow.
That was what he was worth back in 97? 97, was it? I'm now looking up how much this movie made, because that's a lot, isn't it, really?
That does seem like a lot. But obviously, it's hot off the heels of 1994, isn't it?
So its worldwide gross was $300 million.
Oh, wow.
And it's...
Wow, I'm surprised. But they must have tried to get him to do a sequel if it made $300 million.
Yeah, $300 million.
What was its budget?
They paid him 20. I wonder what the budget was. There's no information on the budget here.
Oh, right.
1 second. Liar. Budget. Any information on the budget for this movie? The budget was $45 million, which means $20 million went to Jim Carrey and $25 million made the movie.
Yeah, because if you think about it, there's not other than slightly the car chase bit when he's speeding and the end sequence. Nothing else sequence-wise is going to be that pricey in this.
Yeah. No, 100%. And to be honest, as much as I like the cast in this movie, I mean, none of them were probably demanding, other than Jim Carrey, huge swaths of cash to do it. I think Jennifer Tilly is brilliant. She's great in this movie too. I've been a fan of her since those Chucky movies, but she's not commanding $20 million to do the movie. So
no, they must have tried to get a sequel out of him, and he just presumably said nada.
Yeah, that certainly seems that way. Interesting. Also, I should actually clarify here as well. I want to just give credit. One actor in this we haven't really talked about. I want to talk very briefly. Just want to give Moira Tierney some credit. She plays Audrey. She's fucking great in this. Both in terms of her casting and her performance. There were smart choices made in casting her, and her performance is wonderful. She's a perfect counterpart to Fletcher in this movie. In every way, she really knocks it out of the park. And unfortunately, in these kind of movies, those characters who really are important to ground a movie, when you've got a character acting insane and over the top like Jim Carrey's character, having grounded characters around that person, super important to sell it. The movie does not work without her. And while I can sit here all day and tell you how impressive Jim Carrey's physical comedy acting is, what she's doing in this movie is also incredible. And she, all the kudos.
Agreed.
So according to Jim Carrey, the gag of Fletcher chasing his son with the claw is something Jim Carrey's own father did to him within his siblings.
Oh, it's cool that he brought that to the role.
Yeah, I thought that was nice too. When Fletcher beats himself up in the restroom, no sound effects at all are used. Those are all the actual sounds of Jim Carrey slamming his head and body into things like the urinal floor and walls.
Oh, God.
I know.
You don't need to do
When
it,
I
Jim.
read that, I rewatched the scene and I was like, ow! Because usually a scene like that, you make light contact, and then later on they add like a big crash sound or a big bang. You know, the Foley artists come in and, you know, throw a dummy at a wall to make the thud and then add it to the movie. But no, that's all the original sound.
It's just so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, Jim. It's fine.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. That's fun. What a weird thing, but there you go.
Wow.
A detail I never ever noticed in the movie, Chris, but the trivia has enlightened me, that I think is maybe one of the funnest subtle details in a movie we've done. When Fletcher is having the sort of pen fight in his office, when he's trying to say the blue pen is red, but it's obviously blue, he comes up and the joke is, he comes out from behind the desk and he's got the word blue written all over his face. On his left jaw, you can see the word B.B. King, which is the name of a famous blues musician.
That is a very good joke.
That's so good. That's so
great.
good. So yeah, 10 points to whoever came up with that. That's really good. I like that the movie doesn't draw attention to it either. It's great. Carrie Elves, I think that's how I'm pronouncing his name right. Sorry if I'm not. The actor who plays Jerry, the sort of boyfriend, says that people still come up to him and try to do his bad version of the claw.
Poor bastard.
I think that's hilarious.
That's so unfair.
Oh, well, hopefully he has a good attitude about it. Because, like, someone recently was talking, it was on, like, an AMA with Nick Cage about, like, what things do people, like, yell at you or do to you from your movies that annoy you? And he goes, oh, no, I'm never annoyed by that. I'm very grateful they like my movies and, like, care enough to remember those moments. Hopefully he's got a nice attitude about it and that it doesn't bother him too much. If it does, then people should stop. But if he's happy that people remember him, then from this movie specifically, then that says something about his performance, and I guess he can look at it positively like that.
And I'm sure he is, but I'm looking now. Wesley in The Princess Bride, Robin Hood in Robin Hood Men of Tights, Dr. Gordon in the Saw franchise, and people are coming up to him and doing the claw from Liar Liar.
He's a good actor.
That's all I'm saying.
He's a very talented actor. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
He's going to be
He's got a long old discography.
He's in the next Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah. That's like...
Oh, he's in Mrs. Maisel.
I'm looking down now. I'm
him
like...
from Mrs. Maisel.
This guy's done loads.
Oh,
This guy has worked.
Yeah. That's a charming, talented actor. Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
But your point stands though, which is like people still do the claw. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying here.
Apparently, when Max asks his father, if I keep making this face, will it get stuck like that? Fletcher's reply of, no, in fact, some people make a good living that way, is a tongue-in-cheek reference to Jim Carrey's own career.
Oh, I can work out that of some kind of weird-ass, like, I don't know.
I've never understood that joke, and I'll be honest with you, Chris, an explanation of what the joke is would not normally make it into trivia, because you're just repeating what the meaning of the joke is, and I know that I understood the joke fine. That's 9.9% of the time, that's what happens when someone explains a joke in the trivia of the movie. But I've genuinely never understood that joke, so...
No, I didn't get it.
So I'm glad that was there. Thank you to whoever added that.
Jess and I literally had a conversation about like, what is this joke? So I'm grateful too.
Yeah. To get into character, Carrie. I'm so sorry. Elves. I can't pronounce your surname, my friend. You're very good, but I can't. I'm sorry. The guy who played Jerry, the boyfriend. Apparently, he bought inspirational self-help books from Sky Mall to get into character. I think that's really fun. So in the movie In Living Color from 1990, Jim Carrey played quite a iconic character called Fire Marshal Bill. Now, I've never seen that movie. I don't know this character. But apparently, as a fun nod to it, in the background of the scene where at the airport, when he's on the stretcher, Jim Carrey is also in the background as Fire Marshal Bill talking on a walkie-talkie.
Yeah, nice.
I don't know why that's there, but if that's a reference you get, then thumbs up. I guess that's a win for everyone. As Fletcher is... Oh, this one. Oh, this is the... Mate, I saved one of the best for towards the end here, because we've only got a couple pieces of trivia left. But let me tell you, Chris, this is the best piece of trivia. Full stop. As Fletcher is leaving the court building in the opening of the movie, when the credits are still coming up alongside, someone goes, "Hey, Fletcher, how did it go in there?" And he replies, "Just another victory for the wrongfully accused." And the person who was speaking says, "Yeah, right." Do you know who that person was, Chris?
No.
It's Chris Darden, lawyer that prosecuted O.J. Simpson.
Jesus.
So,
Before or after
a joke about
this?
a lawyer getting people off when they probably did it. Getting a response of, "Yeah, right," from the guy who attempted to prosecute O.J. Simpson.
And at this point, the OJ trial has happened, yeah?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because that was early 90s,
That
this is
is-
late 90s, right?
That is crazy.
Because Nadia was like, "Oh, what, like an actor
That's
who played
wild.
that man?" And I'm like, no, not an actor who played that man. That's the actual lawyer. I don't know how he ended up in this movie at all, and especially in that role. That's very funny. So the trial,
nuts.
looks like the trial happened around 94, 95. This movie is 97, so this is just after that as well. Like, this is like within a couple of years. That's crazy.
That's nuts. That's wild.
So yeah, this is a cynical play on O.J. Simpson being wrongfully accused, in quote marks, for the murder of his ex-wife. There you go. The case Greta talks about, that's the secretary, about her friend and the burglar, is actually based on a real-life case, Bodine versus Enterprise High School, where on March 1st, 1982, at around 1 a.m., a former student trespassed on the school to steal spotlights from the roof. After removing the first one and going to the second one, he fell, resulting in brain damage from the 27-foot fall, which left him mute and quadriplegic. The state declined to prosecute him, viewing the injuries as more than a sufficient punishment for his attempt to rob them. But Borderline's attorney sued the school district and won $260,000 up front, plus $1,500 per month for the rest of his life. That's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't even want to pass comment on that. Just America, what are you doing? Like, seriously. You okay?
Absolutely.
Madness. Anyway, just interesting that it was based on a real life case.
Just talking to America. You okay, hun?
Yeah, UK hun. So we're here at the most important part of the podcast, Chris, and a part that we missed last week, despite there being an obvious thing to discuss on this matter. But it's time, Chris, for my world famous segment, Cars Exist.
We.
A segment started when we noticed that several IMDb trivia pages for movies just named the kind of vehicle, like that was trivia. The bike rode in this movie was a Mitsubishi such a thing, and we just found that funny. So welcome to Cars Exist. This week's Cars Exist actually comes with a slight actual bit of trivia alongside just the make and model of the relevant car, but we'll get to that. So the car in question, Fletcher's car, is the 1996 Mercedes-Benz SL 500 R129. It's a very nice car, and it's the idea is it exudes his success, I guess, because it's like a nice top-down Mercedes number. Anyway, that Mercedes actually doesn't have a glove box because of space limitations. It's a very small, tight, compact car. So the shot that they have in the movie where he opens the glove box and all the unpaid parking tickets pour out is a completely different model of car that they basically swapped to for that interior shot and then went back to the other one.
Oh wow.
because
crazy.
because the original car did not have the glove box in question. So there we go, Chris. We did it. We give you some trivia.
Nice.
We're done. So
Sweet. There we go. Big question, Dan. Where are we going next week?
well, actually, you know what we didn't do, Chris? We didn't say whether we recommend this movie or not.
Oh, good. Yeah, I recommend this movie. 86 minutes. It's a fun time. There's bits of heart. There's bits of comedy. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think if you get in the itch to watch an old Jim Carrey movie, I think this is probably your safest bet of the comedies for sure. Right, where are we going next? Is indeed so. There's a few films that I'm really eager to do So it just came down to what I felt like this morning, and before we started recording, what I was thinking of. And I think it's time, Chris, to finally do a sequel, long teased. That's right, Chris. It's time for us to hit up Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's do it.
I'm a big fan of Gremlins. We have a Gremlins podcast out already. If you haven't heard us talk about Gremlins, feel free to go check out that. Gremlins 2, as beloved by me, because it's what all sequels should be. And I'll tease that and leave it there for us to come back to next week. Excited about that?
Exciting. Yeah. No, I am. I enjoyed the first one. I look forward to seeing this one.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get your opinion on this one, because this is, it's not a traditional. I would say it's not a traditional sequel, and I think that's what's so interesting about it.
Okay.
It's its own thing, which is fun. So yeah, we'll come back to that next week to find out more. If you've not seen the movie before, or any of the movies that I'll tell you right now ahead of time that I'm recommending. Well, actually, it's been a couple of years since I've seen this one, so maybe not. But I'd be surprised. I love this movie as a kid, and I've definitely seen it in my adult life. So yeah, if you want to hear us talk about that right now, and you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, the chances are that podcast is already up and available on our Patreon, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. For as little as $1 a month, you can subscribe and get a week early access to any of these podcasts. We don't do our NBS podcast a week early on that, but we do our other stuff. So yeah, feel free to check us out there. We also have the YouTube channel. You go subscribe.
I was just going to say, any support that you can is great. No pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you don't want to, also good. Do that.
Don't worry about it.
Do the ignoring us thing. Yeah, it's fine. You can wait a week and it'll be available on the whatever feed you're using right now. I think that's everything. Yeah, go tell a friend, give a review if you want, but also whatever. It helps us if you do those things, but we don't mind if you don't. We like that you're listening at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can get us on Twitter. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham with 2 M's. And I think, dear Lord, Chris, I think we're done.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think we're there. I look forward to Gremlins 2. Thank you very much, guys. Sorry to any Lord of the Rings fans, but that's coming. And yes, we'll catch you next time. I'm Chris Billingham.
I'm Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.